Hi, friends. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to read another story from our Standing Up for Yourself text set. The story that we're going to read today comes from an author we've heard before. Her name is Jan Brett, and the story that we're going to hear is Daisy Comes Home. There's a couple words that I want to go over, our vocabulary words. Remember, if you hear this word in our story, you're going to put your finger on your nose. The first one is not so much a word, but a phrase. When you hear face was like a stone, that means that you are showing no emotion. You're expressionless. So it makes it hard for someone to understand how you're feeling. The next word is finally. And finally just means after waiting a long time, sometimes a delay, that something is going to happen. And it was hard to find a picture for the word finally, so I used one from the story. This is actually when the word gets used, so that gives you a clue. And this is not a vocabulary word, but it's going to help us better understand the story because our story takes place in China. Here's my picture. It's cormorant fishing, which is a traditional fishing method which fishermen use trained cormorants to fish in rivers. So instead of using a fishing pole like you might have experience with, they actually use this bird here. Now that we've gone over our vocabulary words, I just want to show you the cover real quick. The story has two characters, Daisy and Mei Mei. And Daisy is actually one of the hens in the story, and she's a really important character. Mei Mei is the one that takes care of the hens. So we're going to read this story to find out what happens with Mei Mei and Daisy. And I don't want you to forget, Jan Brett does something in all of her stories where she likes to add to the borders. And so she's not only telling a story on the main page, but we have to try to do our best to see what's going on in the borders because it's telling more of the stories. And I know that they're really detailed and I can't get that close to the screen, but just do your best to pay attention to those details. All right, here we go. Look over the garden wall and you will see the 6 happiest hens in China. They live in Mei Mei's sandy yard by the Li River, where they lay brown eggs every day for Mei Mei to sell at the market. But it was not always this way. Once upon a time, the smallest hen, the one Mei Mei calls Daisy, was picked on by all the others. This is hard to imagine because Mei Mei was known far and wide for her happy hens. She gave them treats. She put fresh hay in their nests. She gave them baths when they fell in the black mud. And when she called goo 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 goo, all the hens would run to her as fast as their legs could carry them. Even Mei Mei's egg baskets were painted with big red characters that read Happy Hen, and she tried to make it so. But every night when it was time to roost in the hen house, the other hens picked on Daisy. They fluffed up their feathers and crowded her off the perch. They jostled her under. Peck! One or the other pushed her, and thump! Off she fell. Then the hens tucked their heads into their feathers and went to sleep while poor little Daisy was stuck below on the damp mud floor, shivering and cold until morning. There she is. One day it rained all day and the hens stayed inside. When it got dark, they flew up to their perch except for Daisy. She had had enough of pushy hens and cold, damp floors. She went outside to find a place to spend the night. Down on the riverbank, she spied one of the market baskets. She snuggled in, fluffed up her feathers to stay warm. Daisy was sleeping and didn't see the river creeping up the bank from all the rain. And when the water reached her happy hen's basket, she didn't feel it float out on to the river. But when the basket started tipping and bobbing, Daisy woke up. She peeked out and saw a watery world all around her. The sandy yard, the garden wall, and May's farmhouse looked smaller and smaller as the current carried her down the river. Finally, the basket bumped against a stone jetty where a houseboat was tied up. Scratch, scratch, scraped the basket as the river waves pushed it against the sharp rocks. You see right there? She's hit the sharp rocks. Oh, and up here you can see that May is waking up. A dog was sitting up on the deck of the houseboat. When he saw the plump hen bobbing in the basket, he barked and scrambled towards her. Daisy squawked and pecked and beat the air with her wings. It was enough to tip the basket off the rocks, and she floated away just in time. Dawn broke over the Way Mountains as the basket drifted along the river. Branches brushed against it. Fish swam silently by, and the birds flew overhead. Suddenly, Daisy felt a thump. Let me see if I can show you. Do you see what she's making the thump? Yeah, it looks like a cow. Daisy looked up and saw two big horns and a pair of surprised eyes looking down at her. The basket had drifted into the legs of a great big water buffalo taking a morning drink. The buffalo snorted loudly, scaring Daisy. She flew forward and nipped his furry muzzle and flapped her wings. Daisy scared the water buffalo. He turned and galloped up the bank, scattering the ducks as he ran. His splashes made waves that carried the basket back into the middle of the river. Daisy traveled along all day until her basket was hooked by the roots of a banyan tree, where a troop of red-tailed monkeys lived. The curious monkeys eyed Daisy and climbed down for a closer look. Daisy froze as one monkey crept up to the basket and reached in. Daisy flapped and pecked, nipped and squawked. The startled monkey pushed the baskets away. It broke loose from the tree and floated on down the river. Daisy wondered what would happen next. Does this picture look familiar? Yeah, that type of fishing I was talking about. Up ahead, Daisy saw a fisherman with cormorants diving all around his bamboo boat. They were catching fish and taking them to him for a reward. The fisherman felt a soft bump behind him. Thinking it was a cormorant, he reached back and grabbed. How surprised he was to see that it was holding a hen instead of a cormorant. "Finders keepers," he exclaimed. "Little fish, big fish, silver fish, white fish. That's what I sell at the market, but today I will have this tender, young hen." He put a net over the basket and headed to shore with poor Daisy inside. At home, May had looked all day and all night for her little Daisy. She wasn't in the hen house. She wasn't behind the farmhouse. She couldn't fly over the wall. Where is she? May wondered, worried all the time about what had happened to Daisy. Finally, she knew that she had to go to the market. With a sad feeling, she packed her eggs in their baskets and started on her way. As the basket swung back and forth, the red characters on the side of her baskets made May feel sadder and sadder. "Happy hens," she said, aloud to herself. "What about my Daisy? Where can she be?" At the market, May found a place and arranged the eggs in clean, sweet-smelling straw. All morning, shoppers bought her fresh brown eggs, but she couldn't stop thinking about her little lost hen. May heard a voice calling to her. It was her friend Zing yelling from the back of a bike cart. "A fisherman has a happy hen basket," he shouted. "What?" she called, not understanding what he was saying. "A happy hen's basket," he repeated. "You better hurry because he's showing off what's inside." "Daisy!" Maymay shouted. Do you see the guy with Daisy? Maymay raced to where the fish were sold. There was Daisy, beautiful and plump in her basket, surrounded by a crowd, all wanting to buy her. "That's my hen," she cried to the fisherman, but his face was like stone. She pointed to the red characters on the basket. "Happy hens," she said. The fisherman crossed his arms. "Finders keepers," he growled and turned away to sell Daisy. Maymay was about to leave, but her eyes rested on those characters. Happy hens! All she could think about was Daisy in a cooking pot. She squeezed her eyes shut and clenched her fists. She had to do something. "Goo goo 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 goo!" she called at the top of her voice, and when Daisy heard that call, she answered it the way she had every day of her life. She rose up and threw herself against the basket, tipping it over. She ran towards her friend Maymay as fast as her little legs could go. Daisy flew onto Maymay's shoulder, and off they went, running back to get Maymay's basket and go home. The fisherman ran after them, furious. "Stop!" he yelled at Maymay. "That's my hen!" "Finders keepers," Maymay called over her shoulder, and with Daisy clinging to her, she ran and didn't stop until they were safely home. That night, as the sun went down, Daisy took a place on the roost. When one of the big hens fluffed up her wings and spread out, expecting Daisy to fall off the perch like always, Daisy flapped her wings. I learned that from a boat dog. That night, as the sun went down, Daisy took a place on the roost. When one of the big hens fluffed up her wings and spread out, expecting Daisy to fall off the perch like always, Daisy flapped her wings. I learned that from a boat dog, she clucked. Another hen tried to tip her off. She pushed right back. I scared a water buffalo like that, she squawked. Another hen jostled her. Peck, 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 peck. Daisy kept her place on the perch and beat the air with her wings. She remembered the monkey, and she pecked and flapped all over again. That was when the hens gave Daisy a place of her own. The lap, lap, lap of the river made a peaceful nighttime song. No bumping, no jostling, no fussing around. Just 6 happy hens, their heads tucked in their feathers, high and warm and safe together.